You're listening to the Long Game Podcast. I'm your host, Sandra Sciano. Have you ever thought of being an author or stepping on stage to speak? If you have, you know that you've got to have a well-crafted story. There is major work that goes into becoming ready for one of those experiences. My guest today is April Pertuis, a story and visibility expert who has created a unique program for people crafting their story. What I love about what April has created is that, number one, it's about developing your story, not just telling it, but truly working through the pieces to bring stories to life in enriching ways. And number two, what I love about it is that the author program is an all-encompassing experience. From crafting the story to publishing to marketing, it's got everything in it. As April says, publishing the book is only half the work. This is a glimpse into the elements of a well-rounded program experience that delivers on all the things that mean so much, including community and paying it forward. I've been following April and the Elevate Your Voice book program since its inception. With the book launching on Amazon this week, we all now have the chance to dive into 14 women's stories told like only they could, exhibiting a sense of strength throughout. Today, the long game is Elevate Your Voice with April Pertuis. You're listening to the Long Game Podcast with Sandra Sciano. In a world where everyone is doing, it's easy to get lost in a sea of comparison, secret tricks, and promises of overnight success. The long game is my approach to business, the actual day in and day out philosophy that you have to show up, you have to do the work, and there's no quick fixes for long-term success. I'm a web designer, digital strategist, and energetic thinker, and I'm here to share the process and lessons I experience with my clients daily who are going through the same struggles of building a business as you are. We'll hear from successful entrepreneurs sharing their long game strategies, and I'm fun, so we're going to have a little fun along the way too. Thanks for being here. Let's get to today's episode. Hello, everyone. I am so excited for today. It is a return guest, but we are talking about a semi-completely different subject. Related, but different. With me today is my good friend, April Pertuis. Welcome, April.
Thank you, Sandra. So happy to be here. I'm so
excited. Yeah, and I'm so excited to have you on the week of the launch of your book. We're going to go into this. Really, this podcast episode is about sharing your story, book publishing, the training of pulling your story out, like the coaching process of pulling your story out, everyone. So, April has created a group coaching program with a fellow author, Lanette Pottle, and they are also coaching women to bring their story out and then creating a published piece. And the first book is launching in 2 days, and it's called Elevate Your Voice. So I am so excited to hear the process and talk about it more with you, April.
Oh, thank you. It is so exciting because, right now we're literally, as you said, just 2 days away from our book launch, which comes out. The book officially releases April 6th, which may be when the podcast comes out. So it is perfect timing to be doing this. And we're literally just kind of sitting on the edge of our seats with excitement and like lots to do. But it's just been such a cool experience for myself and the women involved in the project. And I'm just really excited to share it with your audience too.
And I remember us talking like before this even happened, like, hey, I have this idea, right?
Yeah.
Should I do this? And let me tell you, you have really taken that idea and given it wings. Like a lot of people do collaborative books, and there's a number of different ways to do them. Hey, everybody, turn in your chapter. We're doing a book on this. Or, some people make you pay to be in a book, right? Like there's all these pieces, but you really took it to another level. So tell us about the components and what's gone into this in terms of a program. Like I love that you created a program, not just a book.
Right. It really is a program first. And then the cherry on the top and sort of the icing on the cake, all those metaphors, right, is that we get a book at the end of it. And the women get to be published inside this book and their stories get shared as part of getting this book out into the world. So I think a lot of women came into it with publishing desires and goals. They definitely had, a vision or a dream of one day writing their story, one day writing a book, but had never actually pulled the trigger. And so the lure of it was certainly about the book, let's get a book, let's get our story out there. But in reality, and what any of these women would tell you now, after having been with us and traveling this journey over the last 9 months, is that it was really so much more about what they learned through the experience of everything that we included in the program. And so when it all started, and I shared with you this idea, I've seen other collaborative books out there. I've been approached to do collaborative books, and I like the concept of them. I think they're great. But one of the things that I always noticed about them is that, and I've had several friends that have been a part of collaborative books.
I've been in one, right?
You were one of them. You were one of these people, which is why I talked to you about it.
Experience, right?
But one of the things that pretty much categorically, I would say, in my experience with the friends that I know and seeing how people approach these collaborative books in the online marketing space, is that there's a real lack of buy-in by all of the authors. And so you might be in the collaborative book, but you're not really shouting it on the rooftops. It never seemed to be something people were proud of. And I was curious about that. Like, oh my gosh, you would go through the whole experience of writing your story and sharing something in this book, and then you actually aren't going through the whole process of sharing it with your audience and celebrating it and all of that. And so that was one piece that was super important to me, that we really get the authors buy-in on this. And we wanted the collaborative experience to truly feel collaborative. So part of our program design was not only to, let's get the authors pulled together that are going to be a part of this book, and let's have them share their story. And yes, we'll publish their story at the end, but let's go through the experience from start to finish together. So we have held calls, weekly calls at first. And then once we got through the writing phase, then we moved to monthly calls, but we were on a call together every single week during the first 6 weeks of this program, because that's when we were doing our writing. And myself as a storytelling coach, I was working with women intimately. Each one of these authors, there are 14 of us total, 13 authors plus myself, that share our stories in this book. And so I was working with all 13 of the women individually and collectively to help them with their specific stories. So they weren't struggling. They weren't left to figure it out on their own. They had an expert helping them figure out how to craft their story, what sorts of pieces of their story were going to be relevant to share. So they had that coaching. And so we were together, and they had accountability partners. We paired them with each other, and we gave them specific accountability partner activities to do and assignments to do. And so the accountability partners were meeting regularly. They were sharing their drafts with each other. And so that whole period of that first 6 weeks to first 2 months before we ever got to where we were sending a first draft to the editor was completely important to get the women on board about this process and to teach them part of the wizardry, if you will, of writing and storytelling. Like, we didn't want them just to write their story. We pushed them to go deeper. We wanted to know more. We asked questions. And so we really helped them pull out a story that it took them a little bit of grit to pull out.
Totally.
It wasn't surface level. It was really deep stuff. And so then we go into the whole other phase of this, which is editing. We hired a professional copy editor, someone who works with two of the big 5 publishing companies to edit, New York Times bestseller type authors. And so she was our editor. And she, we had a period.
Wait, let's just stop there.
I know that was big, right? I don't want to gloss over that.
Okay, we're going to have to stop. Thank you. Don't. That in itself is a gift. It takes the pressure off the writers to know that there is backup on them. And also it's just that extra polish on this, right? Like this isn't just, hey, we're putting a bunch of things together, send me your stuff. That is an elevate your voice move.
Yeah, because again, other projects that I've investigated, it's sort of like write a check or sign up and be a part of the collaborative book. Here's your deadline. Here's what the story needs to be about in terms of a theme or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then just send us your story by said due date and we'll publish it. So I've always wondered, well, is anyone going to read it before we publish it? I mean, is someone going to help me wordsmith my words and make them a little bit better? Because really none of these women, including myself, came into the program being a published author. We were not known writers. This was a new experience for all of us. So, I mean, I've done a little bit of writing and I've published some articles and things like that, but I have a little bit more of a background that leaned towards that direction, whereas the rest of the women did not. And so it was important that not only their accountability partner read their draft and gave feedback, myself and our publisher, Lanette Pottle, read their draft and gave feedback. And then we gave it to the editor, and the editor sent back feedback and made some really nice edits on our behalf, like grammatical things and things that just, you don't want to get bogged down doing. So then we went into a whole nother stage of refining those edits. So once the edits came back from the editor, then the women got their chapters back and they got their feedback from the editor. And then they went back about integrating those changes, those suggested edits, or those questions that the editor might have had about their story and about their chapter, which was gold. It was gold. It was such a great experience to really see how you could take your words and then make them better, So that alone was an education for these women to understand how to really elevate their voice and how to truly make their words shine and how to get variety in the types of words that we use. When we speak, we tend to use a lot of the same words. I mean, one of mine is sort of excited and awesome. I say those words a lot, but when you're writing, you don't want to read excited and awesome in every other paragraph, right? So it was a challenge to really dig deep and find other words from our beautiful language to use, to get what your meaning was. And so looking up things in the dictionary and looking up things for synonyms. I mean, that was all part of it, so it was really fun to do that.
And it's really what you've done is story development. Yes. You've taught these people how to develop a story from start to finish, what happens in the middle, all of those pieces where it's not just storytelling, it's developing that skill. And that's where the coaching part, I think, is invaluable, because this is something that they're going to take on with them for their next project. They're primed for the next thing. And it's this is the first step in their author journey.
Yes.
And there's plenty more to come with this knowledge.
Yeah. And it applies even outside an author journey. It can apply if you're going to do a speech with an audience or give a presentation. It can apply when you're being a guest on a podcast, and naturally on a podcast, you're going to be invited to share a bit of your story. So now you know how to craft that story and not, really learn how to engage the audience when you tell that story. It can translate certainly if, some of these authors that were in our collaborative book now are moving on to write their solo book because they feel equipped. They know how to do it. And through the publishing side of it, because we've worked so closely with our publisher, who was totally involved in the program 100%, she has taught all along the way the ins and outs of publishing. So even if you don't work as a publisher in the future, you go the self-publishing route, these women know how to do it. We've taken all the mystery now, out of it. They're familiar. Exactly. And so the mystery has been removed. And so it's not only equipping them, but empowering them to feel confident, to feel like they know what they're doing and not let fear get in their way, because that's what stops most of us is well, I don't really know how to do that, so I'm not going to do it. And so let me ask you, the whole process has been about equipping and empowering them.
Let me ask you, did you, in the start of this, have a theme? Did you say to everyone, what was the impetus for people to bring that story forward? Because there's a lot of different stories here. I mean, I've been following the women, and you have done a great job. And we will talk about this of the pre-marketing and the pre-excitement. I mean, there are these amazing audiograms out there of everyone just giving snippets of their story, and you're like, that just ended. Where I want to know more, right? And you've really done a good job with teasing that out. But everyone has a different perspective and a different story. So, what were the parameters on bringing your story to the project?
Yes, such a great question, because it's not a hodgepodge of stories. It really is kind of tied together with a theme around our title, which is Elevate Your Voice. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the title in just a second. But at the same time, we really wanted women to have the autonomy to find the story that resonated with them. And so we even gave some exercises in the very, very beginning of the project before they even began writing. We gave them really legit story excavation exercises that just really opened up the doors for them to dig in, to figure out, what might I write about and what am I feeling called to share as it relates to this idea of elevating my own voice and inspiring, courage and strength and perseverance and hope in the reader. Like, how can my story be a piece that does that for the reader? So those were the parameters, which were really pretty loose. They weren't like, oh, you have to write about a time in your life where you were told no, or you don't have, like, we didn't get that specific. We didn't say, oh, write about a time in your life where there was a loss. It wasn't about that. It was literally about just like, what did it mean for you to elevate your voice? And how could you find a story in your own Rolodex of your life that allows you to inspire strength, perseverance, courage, and hope in our reader by showing how you showed up. You used your voice in some way. So as a result, we ended up getting stories that did involve loss and grief. We did get stories of very challenging times in a woman's life. We did get stories of major transformation and change, leaving, significant corporate careers and starting businesses on their own, and like the leap of faith that took. We got stories of battling illness and overcoming that illness by way of using powerful tools like mindset and things like that. So, we got all kinds of stories coming in, but yet when you read them all together, and this is really our hope, is that when you read the book and you read one chapter after another, that the audible level of women's voices gets louder and louder and louder by the time you get to the end of the book. That is the goal. And the whole
cool.
Yes, isn't it good? I just love that.
So cool. So tell us a little bit about your personal work in curating that. That is a major task to undertake, of 14 different stories and curating the order. That is a skill in and of itself, a talent.
Well, let me just tell you, I'm going to read from this book. I'm going to read the table of contents. Okay. And the table of contents shares the story in order. So chapter 1 through chapter 14, and the name of each woman's chapter. Okay.
Okay.
And I'll just let you speak after I'm done and tell me what you experienced by me reading these in order. Stand up for yourself. Own your worth. Allow yourself to be seen. Rise above conditioning. Walk out of the darkness. Live and grieve with courage. Embrace healing adventures. Build the life you need. Love the skin you're in. Find purpose in the unexpected. Discover answers in the unknown. Recognize your gifts. Build your confidence and grow your faith. What do you experience after hearing that, Sandra?
For me, my immediate word was strength. All of these women, there's a thread of strength through all of these stories, and that each one said it in their own unique way or experienced it in their own unique way. But it was like the same experience, in a different way for each person, like said in a different way, but it comes back to the same universal experience of strength. The thread of strength is what I got going through it. Like each woman stood up, each woman stood tall in their experience. So
exactly. And so that's exactly the point.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about like, what are your plans now that the book is coming out? Like, first of all, we know it's coming out on Amazon. We'll have links to it for everyone to be able to purchase. But what is the next step with the story? What is have people been talking to you about that? Is that something that for you with this book, you have a next step?
Yeah. So a couple of things. Number one, for the women involved in the book, who the authors, sharing their story in these chapters, what's their next step is hopefully, and I feel like they all are telling me they feel ready. Like this is an opening of a door for them to go to the next level in terms of not only sharing their story, finding bigger ways to do that, but also walking through a different door or a new door of opportunity to reach more people, to leverage this book so that they can get on the proverbial bigger stages, whatever that may be for them. So, for example, we have one woman, and from our book, Julia, who coming into this project, she didn't have a business. She didn't really know. She was kind of like in a space in her life of seeking and trying to figure out what her next step was going to be. And through the process of digging into her own story, she has gained clarity, and she has since launched a business, and having never done a single interview in her life, has done like 5 podcast interviews and a television interview to date.
Oh my gosh.
That's a big stretch for her because she was so nervous, and that was something that she had never done before. I mean, not only had she never written in a book and published her story, but she had also never done these other things. And so those are the types of doors that open when you publish a book, like you do get in, like you inviting me right now to be on your podcast. That does open up doors. People will reach out and say, hey, come on the podcast and talk about your story, your book. Come share it on our local TV station. She's now getting out on social media, sharing her work. She's a postpartum doula for moms of going through postpartum depression. And that was a big part of her story, had to do with that. And so, her business was even born around her story. And so that's just one example. We have another woman who's already started writing her solo book.
Oh my gosh.
She's already started writing her solo books. We already have some women that have already moved on to like, okay, now I'm ready to write my book and my big book and my only book, my story. And she's doing that. And so that's what's happening with some of the women, from the book. As for me, this just added gasoline to a fire that was already there. But now, having watched these women transform and how this has elevated my business and my brand, it's been a no-brainer to already be launching book number 2. So we already have another group of women going through the same exact process that we took this group through to produce and publish our second collaborative book called Step Into Your Brave, which will publish in the fall of 22. And because storytelling is told in 3s. That's one of my rules of storytelling. Totally. That's pretty universal. That's not my rule, but that's kind of a good rule in storytelling, is you have to make sure the number 3 is present. And so I've already committed to a 3rd book with our publisher that will come out in 2023. So at some point we'll be looking for authors and women that want to come forward for that book, because it has just been so fun and so much in alignment with what I do as a storytelling professional, to help women share their story and shine a light into the world and really own the power of their story instead of letting that story have power over them. Getting them to do this book project with us and walking this journey with us and having the transformative experience of writing your story and publishing it in a book is just a hell yes for me, right? And so It's very easy for me to say, oh yeah, we're going to be doing this for the next couple of years, maybe even longer, but I've committed to the 3 books and I'm super excited about it.
That's a great goal too. And I really hear from you that this is a springboard. Like, I love that this project is a springboard for the women, is a springboard for you. Really diving into something so deep and committing to it shows how, you've said it in describing a number of situations, opening doors. You don't know what types of opportunities can come except from taking the step forward, and kind of facing the fear also, because this is something that we have these aspirations. We all have some aspiration, whether it is the bigger stage or, whatever the proverbial stage is in our own existence or our own experience. But you do have to face the fear and move forward. And so I love that this is a springboard, and not only for them, but for you. Like, you have created this. I recently did actually, this will be upcoming, a podcast about streamlining your offers and how this is so connected to what you do. This is like a perfect fit. It's not another thing that's a satellite over here. It is directly tied, and it's a way to move forward, and it's a way for you to grow in your own business as well.
Yeah. And speaking of streamlining, Sandra, what this did for me personally in my business is I got so much clarity, because this was so connected and so much like, it was literally one of those things, because the publisher, Lanette Pottle, was the one that approached me, because I have this community and I work in storytelling and I have all these women that, I know their stories. And so she really approached me about this idea of like, hey, what would it look like for you to do a collaborative book? And of course, again, we had to make it be something that would make that feel good to me, because I didn't want to be like, oh, sure, sign up and then we'll see you on publishing date. I really wanted to make sure I didn't leave women hanging, and I wanted to walk them through the process. I wanted to create a product that I was proud of, I wanted to put my name on the front cover. I wanted to make sure this was legitimate. This was, I have a journalism degree. Okay. I was a former journalist in a previous career. And so I wasn't just going to slap some words inside of a book and publish it. I have very high standards when it comes to production. So this had to be something that I was all in on. And immediately when she shared it with me and we kind of built this idea around it of what we could do with this actual program, it was an immediate, I'm all in. So much so, brought so much clarity to my own business that it has become a streamlined offer, because I've actually eliminated some of the other things that I was doing in my business that no longer feel in alignment, because I needed to make room for this. And that's why I can sit here today and say, we're going to be doing this for the next couple of years. Like, this isn't a one and done. Like, I'm here for the long haul, the long game, Sandra, right? The long game. I'm here for the long game. I'm committed to helping more women get their stories out by learning the publishing process and telling their story and benefiting from this leveraging opportunity of having a book in your hands that has your name on it, right? Like, there's so much power in that. And what it does for the woman personally, forget all business aside, forget opportunities and doors opening. What this does for the women personally, and the way that I watch them transform through this experience in terms of their own confidence level and their own clarity, is worth the price of admission alone, right? Like, that's enough already. But when you add all of it together, it's such a full body yes that it has allowed me to streamline my offers so much so that this is one of the main things that I'll be doing for the next few years.
I love that. And as you were speaking, another point is that the women have built a community around this book.
Yes.
Not only your extended community, but like, they're getting together, they're supporting one another beyond accountability partners. It started with that. You paired them up. And those are relationships. Like, I try and talk with my clients about this. Like, you've got to go out and make friends on your journey. And you help them develop these relationships by this experience and pairing them up, and then beyond that, this is a community that they can support one another as they continue on.
Totally. And again, that was so important as part of the design of this program. is that we not only were on calls together, we were meeting weekly and then monthly. We had an intimate group where we were gathering, digitally and Facebook. We had a Facebook group that was very active and engaged. We invited them to share where were they struggling, where were they making big strides and wins. And so all along the way, as they were sharing their little stories along the way, that was allowing each other to connect. Because in this first cohort of authors, we've got women from Texas to Canada to Jersey to, oh my gosh, Connecticut. We've got them just sprinkled all across the country. We've got we've got 2 women in Virginia. So, they're all over the map. And the fact that we had someone from Canada allows us to be positioned as an international book now too, which is super exciting, which also offered up some fun challenges to figure out how to not only get your book on Amazon, but you got to get it on Amazon for Canada also. But we persevered through that. But yes, to the community aspect of it, just yesterday, 4 of the women, there's 5 women, I believe, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And many of them had never met each other, and so they all gathered yesterday for the first time to have brunch together and literally meet each other physically in person. Of course, they've met each other, been traveling the journey over the last 9 months, and they were talking about it on social media. They were posting pictures. They are so proud of what they have produced. They are shouting this everywhere. Yes, we're equipping them with marketing material where they're not having to think about that. We're feeding them, we're spoon feeding them every bit of the way how to do this, but I can't make them do it, right? And the reason why they're doing it is because they are so proud of this experience and the women that they've connected with, and they feel strongly about the bonds that they have created. I mean, you're going to have some women telling you that they've met new best friends, that they're going to be connected for life. And as they go on to their future endeavors, they've got this huge support system already built in. I mean, we're going to be buying their next books. We're going to be listening to those podcasts that they're on. If they speak on a stage, we're going to buy a ticket and go listen to them. This is serious stuff. If they have a business they're launching, we're going to support that. So this is serious business of building community. It is multi-layered, as you keep saying, but community is at the heart of anything that I want to do. I just only want to do it if we can't be in community together.
And I know that about you personally, and of course, love that about you, but it is a testament to who you are. That you keep bringing those layers forward all the time as well. And you mentioned the marketing. So before we go, I want to touch on the marketing piece, like the fact that you are planning the marketing out and you said feeding it to them, like you're showing these women the whole experience, that it doesn't just end when your chapter's handed in and the book is edited. Like, to success is seeing it all the way through,
all the way to the finish line,
launch, right?
Yes.
All the way to the finish line. So I know you've done some really clever things. I know you're super savvy on social media. Give us like 2 or 3 things that you're doing in support of this.
Yes. Well, that's one thing that I've told all of the women is that writing your chapter and actually turning in that final draft to be published was only half the battle. The real battle for some of these women was actually announcing it to the world. I wrote a book. It's coming out on Amazon. Go buy it. Like, that is hard.
Revealing themselves.
Because honestly, some of them had this like, oh crap moment, right? Like, oh crap, someone's actually going to read it now. Like, holy cow, that's a little scary. So we have worked. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think it's scarier to reveal it to the people that you know than the people you don't know.
Totally. I mean, it's all about, your mom and your dad and your grandma,
your personal,
and your totally.
So like
your best friend and all that.
World,
yeah. It was for me. It was people in my inner circle in the community where I live. Like, the story I wrote in this was like, ooh, like they're going to know now. They're going to know exactly what I think. I don't know if that's going to be good or bad, but I'm going with it because I have to stand in my truth, right? I had to honor my own voice. And so that was part of it. And so that was part of the coaching that went with these women as well. As the marketing piece is a big, huge piece of it. And we promised them from day one that we were going to be together step by step, walking through the journey of getting to the finish line. And the finish line was not publishing the book. The finish line was launching the book. And so we have spoon fed them marketing graphics and materials. We've made sure it's been tightly branded. Nothing looks out of whack. I mean, all the authors are sharing the same type of stuff, the same type of material. So if you happen to be friends with multiple authors, you're going to see the same type of branding material on one author's social media channels as you're going to see on mine or anyone else's. And so that was very intentional. I did not want to leave that up to chance. My branding is at stake as well. My company, my business. So, I take that very seriously. And so I wanted to show them what running a first class operation was going to look like, so that again, it teaches them, it shows them like, these are the things that you're going to need to do when you go on and maybe write your own book. When we're not there to help them, they're going to know that. We have built a launch team. So we have about 60 people of our closest, tightest, best supporters in all of our networks that have joined a super, small little Facebook group. And they are the ones that have raised their hands that said they're willing to buy 5 or more copies. They're willing to do interviews on their social media. Those have already started taking place this week. They're doing a lot that goes above and beyond just buying a book and leaving a review. They're really helping us at a big level. So we've assembled those people and put them all together. So we've shown them how to do that. And again, Lanette and I are sort of leading that, so the authors don't have to be, when you have 14 authors, it's important that they don't feel lost. Like, one person would do it this way and someone else would do it this way. So we've just kind of taken the guesswork out of that for them. And so those are just some of the things that we've done to help them launch and help them to launch in unison, to help them launch as a collaboration. On launch day, we're going live 3 different times throughout the day, and all of the authors are joining that live stream. We'll all be together. And so it's not just my show, it's all of our shows, and that's been really important. And I think that they've loved the whole experience. Even though launching is hard and putting your work out into the world is scary, they are finding how beneficial and exciting it can be once you do it. And especially it's nice when you do it. You're not alone. You're doing it in community.
Right. When you're supported, I mean, how could they not love it with the support that's come along with it? Not only from you and Lanette, but the other women. That community aspect that's everything. Yes.
Let me share a quick story. This will illustrate it perfectly. So one of our authors in book number 1, which is this one, Elevate Your Voice, lives in the same town as one of the authors coming out that signed up to work in book number 2. For Step Into Your Brave. And as part of the program, which there's so many layers to it, but as part of the program, these authors get copies of advanced copies of the book before it comes out. So we shipped boxes of books to all the authors for them to have leading up to the launch. So one of our authors in book number 1 had received her boxes of books. There was 50 books sitting on her doorstep. And those books arriving at her house made it very real for her. And she went into complete shutdown. Like, I'm not opening that box. There's no way I'm passing these books out. Because again, talking about the fear and all of the things that come up about being seen and heard and sharing your story with other people. So she went into complete, like, I'm not doing it. And the author from book number 2 went over to her house and said, we're going to do this together. You're going to open these books and I'm going to cheer you on. And then she recorded a video. She recorded a video of them doing it to document it, because we had invited all of the authors to do an unboxing video. And there was no way. There was no way Penny was going to do an unboxing video. She couldn't even get the box unboxed. So, Dawn goes over there to her house and brings that box in and sits with Penny while she opens them, records the video for her, and then ask her, how are you feeling? What does this mean? And by the end of that video and by the end of that experience, I mean, you could just see the light return to Penny. She saw the book and held it in her hand for the first time. And she realized this is a big deal and I need to own it and I don't need to shy away from it. I'm going to put my big girl panties on and I'm going to do it, But having that community, like we've already been building community between the two author groups, so that's an example of what can happen when you do this in community.
Oh, I love that story. That really just like brought some emotion to me when you were describing it, because that is really the essence of community, right? And it's even across the different cohorts. Like
yes,
it's already, because those people, the second cohort's already started, correct?
Yes, and they're watching. These women launch this
they're
book,
watching,
and they realize I'm next.
Oh my gosh!
So yeah, they're watching
awesome.
closely. They're watching closely.
Right. Oh my gosh, that is so exciting and such good energy and the whole process. I mean, that piece that you have created the whole experience from start to finish. Like, I really praise you for that and praise you for what you have created for everyone to become a part of. So I wish you so much, luck and joy and experiences and opportunities with the launch of this book. We are going to have all of the details inside the show notes for people to go right to Amazon to purchase. I can't wait. I'm one of the first ones who is making a purchase. Don't send me anything for free. I'm buying mine. No.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. And Sandra, I cannot this is a whole nother aspect of the book, but I do want to let the listeners know that when you have a collaborative book, right, there's royalties that you get on Amazon. If you sell a book, you're going to make a little bit of profit. Well, to split that profit between 14 women seemed ridiculous, right? And none of us are really doing this for money. Like, we're not going to get rich off book sales, and we fully know that. And that's not even our intention. That was never the goal of signing up and the reason why women wanted to do this. And so we have decided to funnel all of our royalties from Amazon book sales to an organization called Kiva.org, which is a microloan company. And so we will be funding microloans. We will specifically pick out microloans that we can fund for underserved women who want to start or need the resources to build and grow a business. And so we will be focused on business women or future emerging business women who are really in that underserved market, that don't have access to a lot of funds, that don't have access to a lot of training, that don't have access to a lot of support. And they've put their request out on Kiva, and we're finding those women. And that's where all of our money goes. So if you do, or when you do go to Amazon and buy the book, Elevate Your Voice, that's where the money is going to go. We're not going to take a dime from these proceeds. We're going to pay it forward.
I was just going to say, way to pay it forward. I mean, that's an important part of an extended community and how you think and how you approach things. It's beautiful and it makes sense. And I think the fact that everyone is on board with that as well goes to show like who you have brought together and the thought process there. So that is even an extra cherry on the top if we can swing it back to the beginning.
Yes, it is a giant cherry on top for sure.
Oh, and I would love for you to come back on and keep us updated. I want to know the next, this is important to get this word out and to get people aware and purchasing, but I also want to know, the next part of the story and how the second book and the second cohort is coming through. So please promise that you'll come back and take us on the journey. Sure.
And I would love to give reports on the types of women that we have helped support through our, funds at Kiva. I'd love to report what's happened for the women, since publishing, and absolutely, we're definitely going to keep those stories rolling in.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Elevate Your Voice is out on Amazon April 6th. We'll have links to it here in the show notes. Go get your copy. I have been hearing the little snippets, and there are certain stories I'm like, I got to finish this. I can't wait. So go out, purchase, and support for many different reasons and many different levels. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining me today. You can access more info in the show notes at thelonggamepodcast.net. If today's show connected with you in some way, please share it with your friends or hop on iTunes and leave me a review. Until next time, keep playing the long game. This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM. Women's Voices Amplified.